It's official. Rickie Collins has been named the starter for Syracuse football in 2025.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and of course, we're always free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And shout out to those who subscribe to this channel each and every day. You all are the best. And of course, on this show, we're going to talk about the big news in Syracuse football. What is it, you may ask? Well, you probably heard it in my intro. Syracuse has its starting quarterback for 2025. It is LSU transfer Rickie Collins. It was named by Syracuse head coach Fran, and he told the media yesterday. So in the first segment, we're going to talk about the information that you need to know about Rickie Collins. Of course, a refresher from what we have already been talking about here throughout the offseason. Plus, we're going to get to Fran Brown's comments on naming a starting quarterback and why I believe someone on Syracuse's roster at the quarterback position is going to transfer out. And later on in the show, we'll talk about the expectations for Syracuse football next season. All that and more here on this edition of Locked On Syracuse. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Folks, what do you all think of Rickie Collins being named the starter of Syracuse football? I want to hear from you right now in the comments section below. Do you think that Rickie Collins can lead Syracuse to a really good, really strong 2025 season? Comment in the comment section below. Let's talk about Rickie Collins and all the information you really need to know about him. He's a transfer from LSU. This happened in December, and to be honest with you, it's really not a surprise that he was named Syracuse's starting quarterback. He is 6'2", 205 pounds, and he is listed as a redshirt sophomore, which means he has 3 years of college eligibility remaining. Collins was a highly touted recruit from Louisiana in 2023, and he chose to go to LSU. However, he didn't see the field a whole lot while at LSU in 2 seasons. He's only thrown 7 career passes, and in 1 year, he took a red shirt. Now, the reason why Rickie Collins didn't see the field a whole lot at LSU is because, well, the quarterbacks ahead of him, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're pretty good at this thing called playing quarterback. And you're only allowed, or you can have more than one quarterback on the field, but most teams only have one quarterback on the field. So that's why Rickie Collins didn't really play a whole lot. In 2023, which was his true freshman season, there was a guy starting at LSU by the name of Jayden Daniels. You might have heard of him. Oh, I don't know. He's just some guy that won the Heisman Trophy as the best player in college football in 2023. And I don't know, as a rookie quarterback, he led the Washington Commanders to the NFC title game. I think that guy's pretty good, right? Well, that was the starter at LSU in 2023. And in 2024, you think that, oh, this might be Rickie Collins' shot, except it wasn't, because there was a guy by the name of Garrett Nussmeier that was there. And maybe Garrett Nussmeier isn't as good as Jayden Daniels, but he was good enough to where he could have easily declared for the 2024 NFL draft and might have been a first-round pick. Maybe there was an outside chance at it. At very least, he probably goes day 2 if he goes to the NFL. But he decided to stay another season, which means had Rickie Collins stayed at LSU, that would be 3 years of sitting on the bench. So obviously, he decides to enter the transfer portal, and you'd have to figure he was looking for an opportunity to start. And while Syracuse was likely going to lose Kyle McCord to the NFL, we'll never know if the NCAA would have ultimately given him a 5th-year waiver. And as a result, Syracuse and Rickie Collins seem like a good match. Syracuse needs a starting quarterback. There's opportunity there. Rickie Collins wants the opportunity to start. And so he ultimately signs with Syracuse in December with the understanding that he would have a legitimate chance to earn the starting job. As far as Rickie Collins' play style, he is a mobile quarterback with a really strong arm. And obviously, he's got a lot of talent, right? He was a highly sought after recruit that was ultimately picked up by LSU. That is obviously not a joke of a program. They've had some pretty damn good quarterbacks there over the last few years. I mentioned Garrett Nussmeier. I mentioned Jayden Daniels. There's also a guy by the name of Joe Burrow you can sprinkle in there as well. I don't know if you've heard of Joe Burrow, but he's pretty good. Just saying. He maybe led LSU to a national championship and led the Cincinnati Bengals to a Super Bowl. That's neither here nor there. But it will be interesting to see how Rickie Collins and his play style is more of a mobile quarterback than, say, Kyle McCord, and how he fits with Syracuse's offense. Offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon, he runs a spread offense. For those that watched Syracuse a year ago with Kyle McCord, it was an offense where he had to make quick and decisive reads, and it essentially relied on the quarterback making a lot of pre-snap reads, where you got to know where you're going with the football before the ball is even snapped. Syracuse also ran a lot of RPOs, which is a run pass option for short, which means you got to be very quick in making You got to be very quick in making your decision as soon as the ball is snapped. Are you going to hand it off to LaQuinn Allen or whoever the running back is next to you? Or are you going to throw the quick slant to Jackson Meeks? You got to make up your mind very, very quickly. It was perfect for a drop back passer like Kyle McCord. Will it work for Rickie Collins, though? I guess that is the $1 million question, but there is one aspect of Rickie Collins that I really liked. I mentioned his mobility, and I think that ultimately is going to help him in this offense because with Kyle McCord, there are highlights of him obviously scrambling, but for all intents and purposes, he was mostly a pocket passer. I'm not trying to knock the guy down or anything. That's just what his play style was. He's a pocket passer, and he was pretty darn good at it. But with Rickie Collins, I mentioned the RPOs with Kyle McCord. Well, with Collins, his mobility opens up the possibility of more triple options. For those that don't know what that means, Rickie Collins could be in the shotgun, and when he gets the ball, he could have 3 potential reads. He could hand the ball off to his running back. He could throw the quick slant or whatever quick route that Syracuse has called for the RPO, or the quarterback keeper. See, we saw Kyle McCord do this once or twice over the season. There's that highlight of him running for 40 and 60 yards. One of them was called back for a penalty. I believe it was against Boston College, where they just didn't respect Kyle McCord's ability to run. And so as a result, the defensive end, he just goes right in and attacks the running back, opens up the outside for Kyle McCord. Well, with Rickie Collins, that defensive end is going to have to respect the fact that Collins can certainly run at a high level. So I think he could fit into Syracuse's spread offense. And I'm going to give the coaching staff the benefit of the doubt. You're not going to recruit a kid if you don't think he can fit within the offense, right? So hopefully he can. Overall, Syracuse football spring game is this Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Unfortunately, I don't believe it's going to be televised. And also, unfortunately, I wanted to be able to be there. I will unfortunately not be able to make it because there is a holiday on that day. Passover is on Saturday. But hopefully, we'll be able to get someone on the podcast here Sunday or Monday to talk more about the Syracuse spring game. Hopefully, Syracuse posts a lot of highlights of Rickie Collins, preferably every throw that Rickie Collins makes, so we don't just see the good ones, we also see the bad ones, and we'll be able to talk about it here more on Locked On Syracuse. What are your thoughts on Rickie Collins being named the starter for Syracuse in 2025? Comment in the comment section below. Speaking of comments, we're going to not hear from Fran Brown in the next segment, but we're going to talk about what Fran Brown had to say regarding the quarterback battle. That's coming up next here on Locked On Syracuse. There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup. but finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until I found Game Time. Game Time makes storing last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you can see the total cost up front, no surprises at checkout. And here's why I love using Game Time. Last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you would like. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This is Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer. And folks, if you're pumped up for the Rickie Collins era over at Syracuse, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already done so, it's completely free, allows the channel to show up directly on your feed, and also it helps Locked On Syracuse grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And trust me, throughout this offseason, we're going to be talking plenty about Syracuse's new starting quarterback, LSU transfer, Rickie Collins. Let's get to what head coach Fran Brown had to say on naming his starter. And he had a couple of quotes that I thought were really interesting, and we're going to analyze them right now. And my first takeaway from what Fran Brown said to the media yesterday is that tie goes to the runner in the quarterback competition. And in this case, the runner was Rickie Collins, to use a baseball analogy, since baseball season is now in full swing. Shout out to the New York Mets, who continue to just have outstanding pitching, but they can't hit. It's really weird, but that's neither here nor there. Here's what Fran Brown, though, had to say, and I'm going to read it to you, all right? Quote, "We just felt as though if it was even, that he had to get it because he hadn't gotten the opportunity of knowing everything. So for him, just learning everything and it being even, giving him the opportunity of just constantly getting better." That was always my thought in this quarterback competition, that if it was even, Syracuse was going to give the starting job ultimately to Rickie Collins. But Fran Brown, at the same time, he doesn't mess around. He's going to play the best player, regardless of where you came from, regardless of your prior pedigree. Obviously, certain guys get more benefit of the doubt than others. For example, if Kyle McCord last year struggled a little bit in camp, which he didn't, then he still would have been the starting quarterback. But you get the point. Fran Brown is going to always play who he thinks is going to give him the best chance to win. That being said, if it was close, or even in this case, Rickie Collins was going to get the starting job. And as Fran Brown alluded to, Rickie Collins is still learning a new offense from offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon. And the other two quarterbacks in the competition, really, aside from the true freshmen Luke Carney and Rich Bellin, but the other two main ones were Jakhari Williams and Michael Johnson Jr. Those guys were with Syracuse last year. They already know the offense. They're not learning it. Those guys are just trying to get better. Whereas a guy like Rickie Collins is not only trying to get better, he's also doing it at the same time while he's learning an offense, a new one, which is not easy to do. So if it's close, it was always going to go to Rickie Collins. And I think the fact that Collins was at least even with them just shows that he's probably better, because, again, he's learning a new offense, which means he's thinking probably more than those other quarterbacks, and yet he's still even with them, or maybe a little bit above them in terms of how they're actually performing. So this is not a surprise. Fran Brown doesn't mess around, but Rickie Collins was the favorite from the start to be Syracuse's starting quarterback as soon as he committed, barring Kyle McCord getting that fifth-year waiver and deciding to return to Syracuse. So that was my number one takeaway from it, that tie goes to the runner, and the runner was always Rickie Collins. Number two, I teased this at the beginning of the show, but from what Fran Brown said, I think someone's going to enter the transfer portal in the spring. For those that don't know, there is a spring football transfer portal window. It opens on April 16th and it runs until April 25th, and it gives everyone in college football another chance to enter the portal. And Syracuse last year made a number of additions in the spring portal window that actually turned out quite well for the Orange. I mean, Clarence Lewis, a starting cornerback. They got Savion Washington, a starting offensive lineman, and more in that spring portal window. Oh, plus a guy by the name of Michael Johnson Jr., who was the backup quarterback last season. Just saying, that spring portal window is pretty important. Here's what Fran Brown had to say, though, regarding the backup quarterbacks and why ultimately I believe someone's going to enter the spring portal window. He said, quote, "They're all working their butts off and doing a good job, so we'll see how it goes. You know, somebody may want to go in the portal or not. That's just the nature of the business. And we wish them the best because they've done a good job." That sounds like someone's probably going to enter the portal. So now the question really becomes, who's it going to be? Well, let's rule out the true freshman. Okay? It's not going to be Luke Carney. It's not going to be Rich Bellin. They just got here. They're not going to enter the transfer portal. If they do, I'll be wrong, and I will also be shocked. They're not entering the portal. So it'll likely be one of the other guys who were competing for the starting job, Jakhari Williams or Michael Johnson Jr., who were both with Syracuse a year ago. I got no inside knowledge on this, but I'm going to make a prediction right here, right now, here on Locked On Syracuse. You ready? Jakhari Williams is going to enter the spring portal window. What do you think? Comment in the comment section below. I'm going to explain to you my reasoning why I believe Jakhari Williams will enter the spring portal window. There are 3 reasons, okay? Number 1, Michael Johnson Jr. is the son of co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach Michael Johnson. I could be wrong, but I don't see Michael Johnson Jr. leaving in the spring portal window and leaving his father. Could be wrong. Don't see it happening. Number 2, who was the backup quarterback last year for Syracuse football? It was Michael Johnson Jr., not Jakhari Williams, and both were on the roster, obviously, a year ago. Fran Brown also talked about in that press conference about that there's still a battle for the second quarterback job and the third quarterback job. Well, Michael Johnson Jr. was the backup to Kyle McCord last year. So if Williams once again doesn't beat out Michael Johnson Jr. for the number 2 job, is he really going to stick around to be the quarterback 3? Is he even going to get the quarterback 3 job? I mean, there's 2 true freshmen there, and Luke Carney and Rich Bellin. Why can't they earn the 3rd string quarterback job? Is he really going to do it? Once again, I'm explaining to you my prediction, why I believe Jakhari Williams is ultimately going to enter that spring portal window. And number 3 of why I believe he will do it is, what if Rickie Collins is good? What if he's good? Right? Collins is only a redshirt sophomore. So he's got 3 more years of college eligibility left. Now, I understand this is a new era of college sports. You can't necessarily look too much into how many years of eligibility someone has, because you could get someone with multiple years and they could leave the following season in the transfer portal. That could obviously happen. But that being said, if Rickie Collins has a really good season over at Syracuse, and it's maybe not good enough to go to the NFL and be a first-round pick, because he could be technically eligible for the NFL draft. It would be 3 years out of high school. But let's say it's that middle ground of, you're not going to be a first-round pick in the NFL, but you're also really good. I think Syracuse would find a way to be able to pay him so he could stick around for another season, in which case Jakhari Williams would have no opportunity to play in 2026 because Rickie Collins would be the starting quarterback, which means that Jakhari Williams didn't play as a true sophomore or as a true freshman, true sophomore, and would have no opportunity to play as a junior. Hello? Doesn't that kind of sound like what happened with Rickie Collins? He just could never get the starting job because there was always someone ahead of him on the depth chart. Ultimately, I believe that Jakhari Williams is going to enter that spring portal window. Could be wrong. I don't have inside knowledge of it, but just judging from what Fran Brown said in that quote, I'll read it to you once again. They're all working their butts off and doing a good job. So we'll see how it goes. Somebody may want to go in the portal or not. That's just the nature of the business, and we wish them the best because they've done a good job. Comment your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think that one of the Syracuse's quarterbacks is going to leave in the transfer portal this spring? I want to hear from you in the comment section below, because coming up, we'll talk about the expectations for Syracuse football with Rickie Collins. That's coming up next on Locked On Syracuse. Here's a question for you all. What are your expectations for Syracuse football now that you know the starting quarterback, at least for the beginning of 2025, is going to be Rickie Collins? I want to hear from you in the comment section below. Predicting Syracuse football next season is admittingly a lot more difficult than a year ago. Go back a year ago around this time. Syracuse was bringing in Kyle McCord from Ohio State, and we kind of knew the deal with Kyle McCord. In fact, he probably exceeded our expectations as a collective. Maybe you saw this coming. I thought he would be really good. I didn't think he'd be that good where he'd break the ACC record for passing yards in a single season. And also, they had a schedule that seemed pretty favorable on paper. I thought they were going to go 8-4 in the regular season. They end up going slightly above that. They go 9-3 in the regular season. They win that 10th game in the bowl game, which was really cool, giving Syracuse its second 10-win season over the past 25 years. That's always nice. This season, a little more tricky. Syracuse lost, obviously, Kyle McCord, hence why there's a new starting quarterback. They lost a good number of veterans, LaQuinn Allen, Oronde Gadsden, Fadil Diggs, and plenty of others. Good news is the coaching staff is in its second year, so they're a little bit more experienced than a year ago. And assuming that Rickie Collins, he, knock on wood, remains healthy throughout the offseason, he is going to be making his first collegiate start in week 1. So we really don't know what to expect from Rickie Collins right off the bat. And who are they playing in week 1, Jackson? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Neutral site in Atlanta against the Tennessee Volunteers. That's going to be fun, right? Talk about being thrown into the fire. Rickie Collins isn't getting a layup to start. He's not playing Colgate week 1. That would have been nice as just a little practice. Nope. Tennessee Volunteers in week 1 in a neutral site. My hope and my expectation for Rickie Collins is that he shows that he is obviously capable this season, but beyond that he could be Syracuse's starting quarterback in 2026. That's my hope, and that's my expectation, and I hope that he can at least lead Syracuse football to a bowl game. I think that is a fair and reasonable expectation for Rickie Collins and Syracuse football this upcoming season because, again, really difficult to project them. It's not like you can look at Syracuse from a year ago and say, oh, they went 9-3 in the regular season. We think they're going to be 9-3 again. Nope. It's a new team, same coaching staff, but new team, tougher schedule on paper, new quarterback. A lot more difficult to project with Rickie Collins. Am I nervous? As you could probably tell, I'm nervous. Admittingly, I'm nervous. I don't know if Rickie Collins really is the guy or not. And we're not going to really find out until week 1. That is going to be the number one story of this entire offseason, is whether or not Rickie Collins is truly the guy. Even if he lights up the spring game, and I hope he does. He goes 20 of 22 and throws for 208, 3 touchdowns, no picks, runs all over the place. He looks like he could win the Heisman Trophy in the spring game. That'd be nice. It'll make us feel positive. Still making your first career collegiate start in week 1. And I do want to give the coaching staff and Fran Brown, obviously, the benefit of the doubt. I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt. They went 9-3 last season. They won the bowl game to make it 10 wins overall. They deserve more of a leash, and that hopefully they are right about Rickie Collins ultimately. And worst case scenario, absolute worst case, Rickie Collins doesn't have it. Neither do any of the other guys on Syracuse's roster. And they go in the portal in 2026 to find themselves a quarterback. That's the worst case scenario. Comment your thoughts in the comments section below. What are your expectations for Rickie Collins? Give me some stat predictions out there. How about over under 25.5 total touchdowns? I want to hear from you in the comments section below. All right. As far as what is coming up on the podcast in the future, tomorrow, we're going to talk about basketball once again here. We'll have on Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. We'll be once again talking about Syracuse and their transfer portal needs. All right. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez as your favorite collegiate players. Get ready for the next level. Get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast and you are excited for the Rickie Collins era of Syracuse football, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Shout out to those who subscribe to Locked On Syracuse each and every day. You all are truly the best, and I will see you all again soon.